There is a sense somehow that this is a zero-sum game. That if there's 10 people in a room and you're one of them, you took a seat away from somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
When in fact, no, you didn't.
Right.
No, you didn't.
Right.
You know, we always had 9 people. Now we have André.
Right.
Now we have 10.
Right. I give talks on DEI. And for me,
You gave me a talk on it one day.
I hope it was well taken. It had to be.
I
know me.
I forgot most of it.
Good. So it was good taken.
What does it stand for again?
It didn't scar you.
Discrimination, exclusion, and intolerance.
Sometimes we seem to talk more about helping brown and black kids obtain educational opportunities, but then we have these kids that only reason they got to Harvard or any of those Ivy League schools is because their father's a funder, went there. As a minority, certainly you have some color in you. When you're in those rooms,
Yeah, I'm probably as dark as you.
you probably are darker than me. I got to get in the sun more. I don't want to get too dark. I don't get pulled over driving black up
me
in the
too.
city. I mean, you got to be careful.
I don't want no
They might
problem
pull
with
you
law
over.
enforcement here.
I know. Race is a component because the room is not diverse. So when you're in these rooms, you go, I'm centered around a whole bunch of people who don't look like me. And I'm either going to acclimate to the room or I'm going to be authentically me. If nobody in my family talked about college, how did I get to college?
Yeah.
Right? And so that's part of this journey that I've been on and why I feel so called to help people who have no voice, no access, no power, right? And so, but I was raised with a lot of love. She worked her tail off always. And I was able to go to college on a football scholarship and do these things, and it made a reality, right? So that's part of the journey. You know, Kurt Franklin did something, and I don't follow Kurt Franklin very much, right? But he did something recently when he got the BET award, and he talked about every time he talked about his accolade that he was receiving an award for, he would say it doesn't make sense. So when you ask me that question, one of the things I would tell you, it doesn't make sense. I know where I come from. For me to do what I've been able to do in my career, even my teachers in high school would say, how's he doing that, right? And I've interacted with some of those teachers, right? And there wasn't much expected from me when I was going through the education system because school was not a framework in which I thought I did well in. Very social, which is weird because people that know me know that I'm very social, love people, love humans.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious
It's an
now.
obvious thing, right? and so, but it also tells you too, there's hidden potential in all of us. By the way, that's a book I'm reading by Adam Grant, great book. There's hidden potential in everyone. So all I did was I got in environments where I didn't know much about the industry. And I became a sponge. And it happened to be in business. And none of my family members are in business. And none of them are entrepreneurs, right? And so for me to be in that space where I started to collect people like you, who were people who held power, had some financial freedom, ran organizations, I didn't know what to do with that. But I was trying to be just good to people.
Yeah.
And I was never after anything. I wanted to be good and figure out, even younger, when I was young in that world, how to be of value. And so I started to collect people along the way. And what happened, I started getting invited into some rooms, invited into some organizations, to some industries that I had really no experience in, but they saw something that they thought was valuable in me, that they wanted me to come in. So for the last 10 years, I have been pulled into industries that I don't know much about, and have been able to thrive. And I think for me, your question was a big question. That's why it's demanding this long of an answer. I just have tried to be a servant in every situation that I've been in. And that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but to serve others is why we're here at the end of the day. And so that was sort of a longer, shorter version of what I would tell you. I don't drink my own Kool-Aid. I get people say some flattering things about me, and I'm humbled by that. But I don't seek that. What I seek is how do we impact people in positive ways, and do things that help people in ways that they've articulated are important to them.
Yeah, but I want to go back to what you said a moment ago about Franklin and his sense that, I don't know how I got here.
Yeah.
and you share that sense.
Yeah, I do.
You just described, I don't know, a way that you got here.
Yeah.
Why is it? Why is it you say that? Why are you still thinking?
Yeah.
I don't know how I got here.
It's not that I'm questioning. Well, I am questioning. What I'm suggesting is when you come from where I come from, and you're raised that way, and you have no example of how you're supposed to operate in a business climate or a nonprofit climate or whatever the climate is, then other people see a side of you that maybe you haven't seen. So there's an old saying, if you could hear how people talk about you, you'd never talk about your way in a negative way.
Yeah.
It's along those premises. And so what I want people to always know is I didn't get here without hard work. I didn't get here without education and learning and being agile and being open and failing and all of that. And so when I say that, I'm saying it on those premises, is that a lot of people, and that's why curiosity is so important when you're interacting with people. A lot of people think, well, Don just woke up and, grew this $1 billion company.
Yeah.
He just woke up and did it, right? Well, no, it took a while, right? And so, but when they see you, they don't see that. What I want people to know is I didn't start this way. And it doesn't matter the start. It really matters what you do with the start. What I did was take advantage of access to people, pick brains, sponge out, and learn what was André going to do authentically if I got opportunities or chased opportunities in business that maybe others didn't see me navigating in. And so my whole thing is be authentic, be transparent, tell the truth, and serve people.
And that's the way I've come to know you.
Yeah.
Right? Those qualities, those attributes. So when you say, I don't know how I got here, I think it betrays the reality of what you did to get here. And I'm only picking on this phrase because I'm trying to think, why are you saying that? What is it about your journey that you don't give yourself credit for making the choices you've made?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, and I want to challenge you on this because it maybe it's rooted in something else.
Yeah.
Is it rooted in your race? Is it rooted that I don't know how I as a black person got here? Or is it I don't know how me as André got here?
Yeah, I don't here's what I think a lot of it is. I remain very humble about some of the work that I've been able to do. And so it comes from always wanting to be humble as opposed to a narcissistic maniac or an egomaniac or an arrogant whatever, right? What I'm saying to people when I say, and I go back to Kurt Franklin, one of the ending part of that speech was, after he acknowledged all of his accolades, he would say, it doesn't make sense until it makes sense.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And that's where I'm going, Don.
Yeah.
The reason it doesn't make sense when you think about my journey to all the stuff that I was able to do was because there was nothing in my past rather that said this is what he will do, right? And so what I'm saying to you is it doesn't make sense, but yet it makes sense. Because what it is, a lot of times what people don't understand is, and I talk a lot about the pivot in life, right? Pivots are meant to reroute you closer to your purpose, if you look at it that way. So there is a spiritual intervention that happens, and destiny is a beautiful thing. The problem with destiny that people have is they think destiny is on their time frame, and it's not. It's on someone else's time frame, right? Yeah. And so when I look at my journey to this life, there was nothing about this life that I was chasing.
Yeah.
But it appeared before me, and I was smart enough to seize the moment. And so I'm very humbled about how I got here. And that's really what I'm not questioning my hard work, my education, my what I learned from failure. I'm not questioning any of that. But it's not what I thought my life would be. I thought my life would be something else. Don't even know what I thought it would be.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. Is
right.
We grow up and then all of a sudden we have this life and we're like, well, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Right. And yet, if you do the archaeological dig that it takes to go back to how did I get here,
right,
and really take that apart, it comes down to choices. you had choices. Some were probably not as good as others,
Right.
but you had choices, and you made more right ones than wrong ones.
Well,
Other people who have choices sometimes make many of the wrong ones.
right.
And then there's the folks who don't have choices.
Right.
And I don't hear you saying that.
No, I think part of it, and I'll go to the race thing really quick, right? I think, especially in the Midwest, right? We're in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City metro area, but we're in Kansas.
Yeah.
We have to be really real about, when we're in business, right? When we're interacting in business at a high level, the room is not diverse typically, right? And so part of it is an appreciation for the fact that I have been invited into a room that doesn't look like me. And it's not on the basis of race. I've never thought that any of the things that I've been invited in had a race component to it. I think they knew I had some value, I would add value, et cetera. And they wanted this skill set to help them do whatever they wanted to do, right? So I never thought it was a race decision because, we have a antenna that pops up when that's the case, right?
Yeah.
But race is a component because the room is not diverse. So when you're in these rooms, you go, I'm centered around a whole bunch of people who don't look like me. And I'm either going to acclimate to the room or I'm going to be authentically me. And what I've tried to help people understand, once you experience being authentic in a room where the room doesn't look like you, there's so much power in that.
Absolutely.
But the challenge is people don't trust that being authentic will hold them in the room.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem going into any room that is filled with people who are not like you.
Right.
And I did that for a long time. Growing up, I was the only Asian-looking kid in my neighborhood of Irish and Polish and Italian immigrants. And, I got called the names and got picked on and things like that because I looked like a minority. And today, I guess I'm not minority enough to be a minority. And that's okay with me. I don't need anybody to think of me other than, what I am and who I am, the character of my, myself. But I do believe, and I get this about there's nobody in the room who looks like me.
Right.
You have two choices. You can pretend and act like the other people in the room and try to fit in that way, or you can be authentic, as you suggest, and just be yourself.
Yeah.
And I think what I see, and this is just an opinion, that maybe a lot of people like yourself need to trust the others in the room a little bit more. Nobody is judging you that harshly. We hired you. You're here in this room for a reason. Bring it.
Yeah.
Who the hell are you? What do you do? What do you want? What can you contribute?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Don't forget to take a donut with you. You know what I mean? It's. I think.
I wish it was that simple.
Well, when we talk about implicit bias, I think that's actually an implicit bias that you would walk into a room and think that. Why?
Right.
Why wouldn't you just be you?
Well, understand what implicit bias is. It's based on our lived experiences, right?
Exactly. I get it. I get
if
why.
So if people of color had experienced a room like that where they weren't treated so well, walls go up and stay up, right? And so they respond accordingly. What I have said to black leaders, brown leaders, yellow leaders, and professionals is we need everybody on your team, right?
Yeah.
And so when I walk into a room, I have a little bit of a trust with people who don't look like me because I have a very diverse network. And so there are, and I've said this on podcasts, there are more people in this business community that are white that amplify André than there are brown, black, or yellow.
Yeah.
And that's just a fact, right? And that's a cultural thing that we can talk about
Well,
later if we need to. And so when I go to a room, I'm taking on face value that I'm in the room because I'm of value and I'm not worried about race. Now, I'm conscious about me being in the room, especially in the industries that I've gone to, which have been banking, construction, and risk management. And then before all of that, there was media and publishing, which wasn't very diverse, right? And so what I've tried to be is authentically me. And I think the challenge that we run into is, again, lived experiences. If you're walking into those rooms and you're female or you're of color, you don't know that you can trust being authentic because you might not be accepted, therefore you might be rejected. So what we do as a protection is we acclimate.
What would the purpose be, or what would the thinking be between or by the others in the room of not accepting you? Is it because of their biases, their prejudices? Okay.
Yes.
So,
or what they think their biases might be, so they're going to hold on to it
yeah, but
until
they
feel safe.
But reality, it comes down to what you think their biases are, because you don't know.
Right.
Unless you've been with those people in
Right.
a similar room at a given time where they've demonstrated, less than equitable thinking.
But
right?
you also have
But
you're going to protect yourself too, right?
I get that.
And it is a bias, right? It is a bias.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I said before.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's an implicit bias.
Right.
You're walking in a room thinking, shit, I better not fuck up in here or
Right.
somebody's going to kick my ass for
That's
it. I'll
right.
never be invited back.
That's right.
Right? When, in fact, you were invited. Why? Just like everybody else in the room, because we need your input, because you're one of the people who could contribute to whatever the hell it is we're in here talking about. And I think that there is a sense somehow that this is a zero-sum game. That if there's 10 people in the room and you're one of them, you took a seat away from somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
When in fact, no, you didn't.
Right.
No, you didn't.
Right.
We always had 9 people. Now we have André.
Right.
Now we have 10.
Right. Yeah,
we didn't take it from anybody.
You didn't. I think part of it too is a trust factor, right?
Well, I think it's coming down to trust,
yeah.
right?
So I think if we go back to, look, we're from the East Coast. My mother grew up in Saratoga Springs, New York. All of her brothers and sisters were from the New Jersey, Eastwood, Westwood, Teaneck, Passaic County, et cetera, Hackensack, New Jersey. And you can't run into anyone of color in this country that hasn't had a negative interaction with law enforcement, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so that's part of a lived experience, right? So there's a trust factor with law enforcement. Now, I've had some, negative interactions with law. 98% of my interactions with law have been perfect.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but that's a lived experience. And so my guard goes up around law enforcement initially. And the communication or reaction to them, depending on how it is, will bring down the walls or raise the wall. Corporate's no different. They may have come from, and again, bias, you may have come from another setting where you had to acclimate. It was expected that you acclimate to that environment, not show your true self. Mm-hmm. So you go into another environment with the same kind of a demographic, and of course you're going to act the same way until you have better trust that, these guys are really cool guys. I can really let my hair down. I don't have hair, by the way. Really let my hair down. And
figuratively speaking, yes.
There has to be. My son has amazing hair. I just don't. But then so there's the trust factor, right? So the more you trust the environment that they're accepting, the culture is strong, then you start to be who you needed to be, and you start to get confidence knowing that they hired you for you and not because you checked the box, right? And so that's part of it. But it's an interesting dance and balance of interacting in the room. And it's funny because there's a saying in Black culture: if you walk into a coffee shop and another person of color walks in, you do the head nod.
Uh-huh.
And it's acknowledging that there's somebody else in the room who looks like me.
Yeah.
And my wife and I went to NASCAR years ago. And look, that is not a very diverse environment, I got to tell you. But here's what I'll tell you. A brother walked in. I saw him. I threw my hand up. He threw his hand up, and we didn't say a word. We kept going, and my wife just started laughing. And it's part of that, right? We need to trust the environment that we're being invited into.
Yeah, I think about now and in the future and the world we want to leave our children,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly would love to see that trust factor not be an obstacle to anybody, or of even concern. I would love to believe that 99 and 100% of all non-blacks or non-people of color are actually pretty decent people.
Yeah.
And they're accepting and they tolerate and they want to invite. They're generous by nature.
Yep.
And I always, I think, feel bad when I feel like some minority thinks that I wouldn't or couldn't or wouldn't conceive of giving them a leg up or helping them out or, even just treating them as anybody else or anybody else that works in the environment. Because I've had, blacks in our work environments and whites and, you're right. The blacks who always worked always congregated together. They went to lunch together. They showed up together in the mornings. It's like they met for coffee or just parked their cars in the same spot. I mean, there was a community between them that they felt like they had to hang on to each other, even though in some clinics they were actually the majority, not the minority, right? And I always felt bad.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Well, that's why there was.
I always wanted to fix it.
Yeah, that's why corporations started doing ERGs, employee resource groups, right? Was because you wanted like-minded community to be able to interact and share concerns and just experience their culture together. What I've always said is, if we're going to have ERGs in corporate, Asian ERG, Black ERG, Hispanic, whatever, right? Black ERGs. Then you've just created segregation. So you want these groups, in my opinion, to interact with each other. And then I did something for Jay Dunn a couple of years ago, and one of the Black ERG goes, why do you feel about, if we don't allow anybody else in our group? And I said, it's very hard to be inclusive while being exclusive. Mm-hmm. So you got to think about that, right? But those groups were started because you wanted groups like what you just described to be able to interact and share commonality, right? And what I would say is, when you have a group of people that are congregating, why aren't the other groups interacting and saying, why aren't you guys over here with us? That's the culture, right? How do you build that inclusive culture? And I think I'll share an example. I'll share a story with you because I like storytelling, and these are lived experiences. I have said for a number of years, even with what's going on politically in this country, with DEI, inclusivity, and the immigration policies that are happening, what I've said for years, and maybe it's my Pollyannish thinking that gets me here, but I have faith that what you described, 90% of the country feels, or whatever that percentage is, a high 90%, doesn't care about race. There's a small fragment of this country that still wants to live in Jim Crow. We know we need to acknowledge that. Here's an example. I have a young son. He's 8.5. And we decided we'd take him out to a park on 151st. I can't think of the name of the park. Doesn't matter. So he's my complexion. We have Irish in our blood, and so I'm fairly light complected. So people don't know if I'm Dominican, or Hispanic, or Black. They don't know what I am, right? And that's all good. But my great grandmother was white and Irish, and so that's why I look the way I look. And he's a biracial kid, and we had him out in the sun, and we took him out for a stroll. It just got hot really quick. And he's red, and then I had a car that wouldn't start. So we're at this park. There's no park ranger, but there's a group of cyclists up by the way. And I go, I'm going to go up there and see if anybody has any jumper cables so we can get him out, because it's getting hot. We got him underneath the tree and everything. And I go up, all white cyclists. It's important for the story. All white cyclists. And I go, does anyone have jumper cables? They go, no, man, we don't have any. We're about to go for a ride. I go, no worries. My wife's trying to call one of her clients to see if they could pop by. And so while we're waiting, a guy comes down, and he tosses me the keys to his new Range Rover. And he says, look, we're going to go on a 2-hour bike ride. Take our car, get your family out of here. And when we get done riding, we'll text you and we'll meet back up. And it tells me that there are more people that do that than go, I don't want you around because you look a certain way. But they get all the press. And we know that. We just have to buy into it. We can't be cynical when it comes to stuff like that. But if you haven't experienced that, you're going to be cynical.
What's what I learned in Saudi Arabia. I was spending some time over there. Their perception of the U.S. and race relations here is that we're at each other's throats.
It appears so.
And that's all you see on the news, so I guess that must be the case. And, it's my lived experience that it's not at all the case. And I can tell you precisely when I really realized that is when I got to California in 1984. And I saw the diversity out there. Mm-hmm. I mean, even, first generation, if not, directly immigrants, they were everywhere.
Yeah.
Blacks, Hispanics, they were everywhere. Because why? We hired the best of the best.
Right.
Color notwithstanding.
Yep.
Did not matter.
Yep.
I told somebody at a conference here that I went to, a DEI conference, I said, I don't care if you're purple. If you can do the job for the least amount of money, you're mine. I don't care what you wear. I don't care where the nose ring goes. I really don't care.
Just do the job.
Just do the job. I'm going to trade you my money for your skills.
Service,
and if you just focus on that, and I focus on that,
Yeah.
that's all we need to do. It's a value for value relationship.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Here's what I'll tell you. You know, DEI needs to transform in a lot of different ways. I don't speak from a DEI professional lens. I speak from a person who is diverse, that have been in, boardrooms and executive rooms and leadership and all that. And I give talks on DEI. And for me,
you gave me a talk on it one day.
I hope it was well taken. It had to be. I know me.
I forgot most of it.
Good. So it was good taken.
What does it stand for again?
It didn't scar you.
Discrimination, exclusion, and intolerance.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So
right?
Here's what I'll tell you it is for me. Good leaders make sure everyone is included.
Yeah.
And if we focus in on that, and so for me, DEI sits under leadership for me. And so I did this presentation. I was called in to do this paid talk for a company. And I use this analogy, and I want to use it with you. And I want you to tell me how you feel about it. It just made sense to me. I want you to think about a playground, elementary. We were always on that little metal thing that went in a circle.
Yeah.
That made us dizzy.
The merry-go-round,
right?
yeah, whatever
and if
it
you
was.
got off and you got hit by it, you were in a hospital because it damaged you.
Yeah.
I said, imagine, and these are people in the room that were parents, obviously, was that demographic. I said, how many people are parents? And they all were. I said, how many people have girls? We all did. And I said, I want you to imagine that all the white girls are on this apparatus, and all the brown and black girls are against the fence. And I said, who in the room, as parents, would ask the brown and black girls why they're not on the apparatus? And every hand went up. And I said, why do we stop when we get to corporate? We have rooms that are not populated by any diversity. Talent is a gimme. If you look at statistics, black women are some of the most educated people in this country because they feel like that's the competitive edge to be able to do what they need, right? So we get to corporate and we're in a room full of men at a boardroom or whatever it is, and we're just carrying on business. And we don't stop and go, where are the women? How come we don't have women in this room? For perspective, we need another lens. We don't, right? Because we're used to that. That's what I mean by the leadership. We're asking, even on the diversity side, we should be asking, and we don't often, we should be asking, what does it say about our company if we can't attract diverse talent? And that's not an attack, because again, what I'm after, I don't ever want someone, I think we got to get beyond making people retreat and defend themselves. I think we have to make people rethink. You can only make people rethink by saying, we're not accusing you of anything. We want to have a discussion. My observation is if you have an organization that has no ethnicity diversity or gender diversity, it says something about your organization. And that's an observation. You have to figure out what that means. You can't use the excuse, well, we just can't find diverse talent. Not an excuse.
Yeah.
It's
okay,
not.
but go back to your original point about the merry-go-round and the playground.
Yeah.
If all the white girls were on the merry-go-round and all the girls of color were against the fence, what would you do? Kick the white girls off and bring in the girls of color?
Nope.
Would you say to the girls of color that are against the fence, who of you would like to play?
Nope.
What would you expect the parents to do?
Invite them.
Invite them.
Invite them to, what if they don't feel comfortable on that apparatus because all the white girls are playing and having fun and none of those kids are inviting those kids to play with them and they feel a certain way about that. A parent by human nature would go over the fence and go, you guys need to get on the apparatus. Why aren't you playing? We would ask those questions.
So this is your analogy to you going in the room and not seeing anybody that looks like you. You're reluctant or you're standing against the fence waiting for somebody to invite you?
I'm not. I'm in the room and I'm asking those questions. Okay. I'm the parent that's asking the brown girls and black girls, why aren't you on this apparatus?
Yeah, okay.
And I'm asking the organization, not in a way that's threatening, but I'm saying, did you realize in this boardroom, we have no women in this boardroom?
I get that, but to me that's two different things. So where I think your analogy may be missing a little bit or a little bit weak is it wasn't contrived in the first place that all the white girls got on the merry-go-round.
No.
The little girls just went and played.
Right.
And if the blacks and brown girls didn't feel comfortable playing with the white girls, then they stood against the fence and watched.
Mm-hmm.
The goal would be then to get them comfortable, trusting, just like we talked about with meetings you go into. It's a lack of trust. I don't trust that the white girls on the merry-go-round are going to treat me very nicely.
It's not the black and brown girls that have to do that. That's the organization. The organization has to create trust so that the brown and black girls feel accepted and wanted to want to be on that
In a
apparatus.
managed organization, I get that.
Yeah, yeah.
In the playground, it's freewheeling.
But if I'm a teacher on the
Well,
playground and I see these brown and black girls against the fence, I'm probably the teacher that says you guys should play.
Yeah, you grew up in a different time than me then.
Yeah.
Because when we were sent out to go play, there was no supervision. It was go play.
Yeah.
And, there were fights in the playground and things like
course.
that. And, because there was no supervision, there were people falling off the monkey bars and hitting their heads on the merry-go-round and crap like that all the time. Because why? There was no supervision. It wasn't until more recently that we decided our kids cannot play unsupervised
Right.
that we had to send supervisors out to watch them play.
Right.
And every little offense gets elevated and escalated. And, when kids used to resolve these things on their own.
Well, you want them to, right?
Well, you want them to. What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
coming a long way around the barn, so maybe that's part of the problem, is what would it take, or under what circumstances could these little girls resolve this on their own? Because I think what you're saying is if in the classroom or in other aspects of them being in school, they became friends with any one of the black and brown girls, then once they're friends, if the little white girl's on the merry-go-round with the other white girls, the black or brown girl shouldn't feel intimidated or concerned about going and playing with them too.
Right.
And so what the institution can be doing, I think, is encouraging friendships and relationships between the diverse group within their classrooms, which would lead then to more diversity in terms of participation in the playground.
Right. And keep in mind, too, what I was using was an analogy, a visual analogy to get people to think about how we're looking at corporate boardrooms. Now, my hope for the playground analogy would be that several of the girls who were white on the apparatus would get off the apparatus and go, you should play with us too.
Yeah, of course.
And we think that would happen. I mean,
I think that would happen.
Yeah, right. And so it was a visual analogy, but it's also to say too, we talked about this earlier. We walk into rooms, and if you're sort of the majority in the room, you don't even see it. Oftentimes you don't see that someone's missing, right? Because you're used to seeing what you see. If you're a minority in a room, you know who's in the room, because what you're looking for is someone else that looks like you, but we're not the majority of the country.
Right.
And so those rooms, and trust me, as a minority, certainly you have some color in you. When you're in those rooms,
Yeah, I'm probably as dark as you.
you probably are darker than me. I got to get in the sun more. I don't want to get too dark. I don't get pulled over driving black up
me
in the
too.
city. I mean, you got to be careful.
I don't want no
It might
problem
pull
with
you
law
over.
enforcement here.
I know, but part of that is, and that's not a knock on white culture at all. But what we want white culture to understand: everyone of color is not going to be comfortable in an environment that doesn't represent them well. And so, how do we help people become comfortable, just like we do with training and everything else that we do, by making sure that they are able to say and do what they want, they are able to do authentically.
Okay.
And that's hard.
So I can ask this question,
Yeah.
or maybe make this comment first, but that willingness to open yourself up to people of other color, whether, the playground kind of thing.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I mean, I've got 5 grandchildren, 2 of whom are going to school, and they don't see color. They don't have any idea
I love it.
that all this crap goes on and that people
beautiful
could
thing.
think this way. And I think it's going to continue to be that way.
I hope.
She's got little, Asian friends, Indian friends, black friends, Hispanic friends. She doesn't even think about it. They don't even think about it, which I think is a beautiful thing. Maybe because they're so innocent, they don't have any reason to think differently.
Mm.
Why would we give them one? Why would we hand them a reason to feel uncomfortable, to feel not included, to feel inferior in some way, that you first have to count the people in the room and go, okay, who would be with me, who would be against me, and gee, if I speak up, who's going to yell at me? And I mean, we all go through that.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know that when young in my career that I ever walked into the meeting and thought, okay, I'm going to be able to talk as much as everybody else in the room because I'm just as important as everybody else here.
Right.
I want my 5 minutes.
Right.
There were plenty of meetings I went to. I never said a peep. I mean, not a word. And if I did try to talk, my boss would look at me like, "Shut up."
Right.
You know, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you.
That's right.
You know, and I think that that's an anxiety that we all have on some level. Are we going to be accepted? Are we smart enough? Are we adept enough? Are we articulate enough to get our points across in meetings with anybody in the room who could judge us harshly? And what you learn to do after experience, right, is to get more comfortable with that. You have had, uniquely perhaps, but you're not the only one.
No.
You've
not at all.
had this experience. You've seen that you can be you and not engender any negative. I mean, look, I don't know what the white guys in the room are thinking. They might be thinking, "Oh, this uppity black guy, he thinks he's so smart."
I hope not.
Nobody ever know what you're thinking,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And it's okay. I mean, that's what I used to tell people. I don't give a shit if you think it. Just don't say it out
Right,
loud.
right.
You
Yeah,
know?
lock that up.
I don't
Lock
wanna-
that down. Yeah.
Temper that with, hey, I think Andre's a great guy.
Right.
But I guess I would encourage adults of color who have this experience, have learned that it's not a threat to them, that they can be themselves. That's what these young people need to be hearing. You're okay. You're not being judged. Nobody's looking at you that way.
Yeah.
I remember during the BLM days, well, it matters. You have to see color. You can't be colorblind. Well, if I had a choice and you wanted me to sort you like I'm sorting, novices at the Hogwarts, or just treat you like I treat everybody else. I mean, look, I treat everybody the same. I don't care if you're the janitor or the CEO. Right. I don't care if you're black or green or purple or white. Why can't we just agree that that's the way most of the time it is?
Yeah, I wish.
And that there are exceptions. I get that.
Yeah.
But it's not the rule, it's the exception. At least I would hope it is today.
Yeah, I wish that was the reality in the world that we live in, but that is not the reality. Now, what I will tell you, I have young kids. I love kids. I do a lot of work in the nonprofit world around kids, especially urban kids. Care about that. I grew up that way. We just talked about that. I love interacting with young people because they don't have any of the stuff that adults have.
Right, baggage.
They
don't
haven't
have the
been
baggage.
impacted.
Right.
They haven't had any life experiences. So when you see Asian, black, brown, Hispanic playing with white, and that's a beautiful thing. I wish the world was that way. And then here's what happens. Those kids grow up and the world starts saying black is important, that you know who people are. Brown is important, that you know who people are. Yellow is important, that you know who people are. So then you get in a world which doesn't think the way that you just described. The world thinks completely different. And so now they start acknowledging people. And what I've always said to people, especially when George Floyd got murdered, one of the things I said, and certainly with Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, the movement is a good organization. There's some other fashions of Black Lives Matter that's different. But I will tell you, if people truly understood what Black Lives Matter, they wouldn't be so negative about it, right? And we won't talk about that yet, or we can decide that. But I wanted to say that. But the other thing I would tell you too is when George Floyd got murdered, there were people that typically non-black or brown would come out and say, "I just don't see color." And I said, you have to see color. Because if you don't see my color, you don't see me. Now, what you're saying is you don't fixate on color. And I'm good with that. But you would never go to a woman and go, "I don't see you as a woman."
Well, to me, it's like picking out a car. If I wanted to go buy a new Corvette, and I said, "Well, I really don't care what color it is. I know it's a Corvette underneath. It doesn't matter whether it's red, green, blue, white. Doesn't matter." And I look at human beings the same way. I go, "What's the matter? What does it matter what is on the surface? It's what's inside that matters." And so
push back on that.
I try to look past that.
Yeah, and what you're doing is you're saying what I said, right? Which is, I have tons of diverse friends in my network. I don't have just one white person. I have a ton of people that are in my network, and I know they're white. I never fixate on it. They're good human beings. They're great human beings, right? And I think that's what and I think we have to have grace as people of color, and here's where my grace goes with this conversation and race conversation, et cetera. In my head, I go, is this a malicious conversation or is it an ignorance conversation? Typically, it's ignorance, right? It's typically ignorant. You don't understand that. Like when people say, Hey, I met this guy. He's black. He's a leader. He's so articulate. That's not a compliment.
Yeah, I know. I
Right?
heard, yeah.
And so I'm not mad that you said it. I want to help you. That's not a compliment, right? Because the suggestion would be before he spoke, I didn't think he put two words together. Now he spoke. I'm so shocked. That's not a compliment. What I'm saying about color is you need to acknowledge that I'm a color, but you don't fixate on it. You're not fixated on my color. I acknowledge you are of color, and that's all I go. That's as far as I take it.
Let's take that to a group setting, right? Because you keep talking about walking into rooms. I'm assuming there's a number of people in there.
Yeah.
If it were the organization's responsibility that if we invited 20 people to a meeting, I have to make sure there's 4 blacks in there because you're about 20% of the population. With that's not going to satisfy anything. That's just quotas. That's just a quota. What does it solve if there's still a lack of trust? If there's still on the part of the minority who's in the room, if there's still, I don't know, whatever the implicit biases the others, the white people in the room might have, if we don't change that, just meeting the quota doesn't change it either, does it?
I think it's more about intent. What's the intent of inviting black and brown people to the room? Is it to get a perspective, a better lens? That's a different thing. But if it's like, hey, we're going to have this meeting, I don't want to get dinged by anything, so we got to make sure we have got some people of color just to make sure. That's not what I'm after.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that. By having people who have different lived experiences only can help any organization. You'd almost have to be locked underneath the rock to understand that diversity doesn't hurt your organization,
I think it's been demonstrated.
But the problem exists when we're having those kind of rooms and vacuums, and we're trying to figure out things. And you've got some people of color in your organization you're not even inviting to the room for their perspective. You just want a perspective. What are we missing? Are we doing the right things? When I was with, another company, and George Floyd got murdered, they were asking me if we should put out a message, and I love that they asked me. Very white-dominated organization, but I felt very at home. They never treated me bad. Great organization. I said no. We don't have any black workers other than myself. We don't need to put out any messaging.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I'm talking about. We have got to be open to different points of view from different ethnicities if they're housed within our organizations. And to have a meeting with only one demographic just doesn't make any sense in today's culture, because so much of the world is not white, and that is part of another discussion. The browning of America is a real thing for people, right? And so what I try to do when I'm in those rooms is I'm looking across, especially when I'm invited into a board opportunity or employment opportunity, I'm looking around to see how are they treating me. And when I was at the other company, I was one of the only, there's 2 of us of color. Was I treated bad? Never. Did I feel like I was wanted there? Of course, or I wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
We remove ourselves from environments where we don't feel wanted.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? Because every organization, there could be a different reason why you're leaving. So I think, again, most organizations understand the value of having diverse organizations. Sometimes those words are hijacked. Most people don't even know what DEI is, but yet you can't talk about those things. I still talk about them. There are organizations that don't care what's happening nationally. They're still talking about DEI and doing DEI work. It's good work because, again, it's about inclusion, right? So back to the whole apparatus. It's about including. Now, again, what you would hope is an environment, a culture, would say to leadership, how come we're not employing women?
Well, I think that's this sort of like capitalism. It's got to be a little bit self-correcting, right? If government mandates specific implementation or execution of policies, to me, that's just force-feeding a situation that isn't going to respond, in a very high positive way. It's maybe a little bit of positive comes from it, but not a lot. Organizations that practice inclusive skills, practice, inclusive policies, they should get more workers than people or organizations who don't.
100%.
It should be a merit-based.
100%.
I want to work for you because you give a crap, right? I don't want to work for them because it's clear they don't.
That's right.
Right? And it would be self-correcting then, because if I really needed minority workers in my organization, but clearly they're voting with their feet I need to fix something, right? Rather than government telling me I have to do something.
Yeah, I think government has its place. I think sort of what you're hinting around is, to me, affirmative action, right? And that was necessary in the 60s because black businesses weren't getting some of the government contracts. So we had to initiate that. Yeah. Now, what I'll tell you is I don't know one black leader or professional that would celebrate the fact that I got the job because I'm black.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
They have too much damn pride. And we have an antenna that comes up when and I'll tell you, I won't name the company because it's not important. But in the George Floyd era, I was invited to speak to a construction firm about DEI.
Ooh.
So here's what I did. Tell me why now. Well, we've always been really diverse, and we want to just let people know that we want diverse workers and blah blah this. And I said, let me ask you this. Of your leadership, who's on board with this? Oh, about 25% of our leadership said, I'm never going to come speak to you.
Yeah.
I'm never going to come. Now, what I would do was do a smaller group with your leadership team to figure out why you only have 25% on board.
Yeah.
That's a problem, right? That's why it's a leadership discussion. Any paid talk that I do, or even non-paid talk that I do, are certainly around DEI. If leadership's not in the room, Andre's not present.
Yeah.
Because you can't do DEI from the bottom up.
No.
It's a top-down philosophy. And again, companies I've been in with, I've never felt like my color was the thing that got me in.
Yeah.
Right? And now others have a different lived experience from that, right? And so I think that's what we have to do, is be open to others' lived experiences. But, for the most part, I think we have a culture here where we are accepting of different points of view for the most part. And then there's an agenda by bringing people of color on, right? And I know those companies, and that's okay. I mean, again, think about DEI now. DEI is not anything you talk about now, certainly coming from DC, but now you have organizations that are not even doing DEI anymore because of what the threat could be. And that, to me, my thing on that, and I won't go deep on that because that's a whole different conversation, but what I'll tell you is, if you're doing DEI, you don't have to announce it.
Well, I think it's the environment that you end up working in.
Right.
And
you're doing the work.
That's what I'm saying is, in commercial business or any kind of business, I guess, if I want to be in a more diverse, accepting, inclusive environment, then I look at those companies that offer that and are actively promoting that, and I shy away from the companies who are not.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, there's something about another company that actually drive me to go work there in spite of their shortcomings.
That's right.
And, it's like the same DEI conference I went to. This lady, was asking me about what our diversity hiring plans are. And that's when I said, I don't care if you're purple and you got pink hair. And,
right, you're in.
The nose ring is on your, it doesn't matter. Just do the work and do it for the least amount of money. You're mine, right? I'll take you. But she came over and she asked me, she said, okay, so you think well, I also made a joke. I said, we've got 70% of our workforce is actually women. So we're really out of whack with the demographics. So should I fire the women and hire male nurses to even it all out? She's like, well, no, I would never do that. Okay, well, however, if I was missing a quota for one of your folks on the intersectionality list, you would be asking me what I'm doing about that, right? But nobody cares about white males. So you don't care. That's fine. I don't, they have all the privilege in the world. They're the ones who own the slaves. Whatever your rationale is, me hiring a bunch of white male nurses to even out the gender disparity in my organization is not how you would want me to solve the problem. And I wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even consider it.
Of course you would.
But you brought it up.
Right.
And then she came back to me and she said, well, that's fine. How many females are on your board? And I said, none. And she said, why? And I said, because I don't get to pick them. The investors get to pick them. Because why? They're controlling me based on the investments I took from them. It's a hostage situation.
Right. That's a very unique situation.
I do not get to choose. Now, you want to go call the venture capital firms.
Or write me a check and I'll have some people come over. Yeah,
and
that's
I'll
a
have,
thing.
diverse board. And I have 3 daughters, 2 of whom are in the healthcare industry. I'd love to have them on my board.
Right.
But the VCs won't let me.
Right.
I had a woman on the board. She was she handled all of our billing and financial work for a number of years. She was fantastic. The first thing they did is took her off the board. They didn't care that she was black, but I had a black woman on my board. She
Right.
was actually a co-founder with me. She had founder stock. You know what they had me do? They had me go buy her shares back from her and cut her out of the deal completely. She'd have been a millionaire if she'd have kept her shares. But it wasn't to do that. It wasn't about she's black, we need to take things away from her. Or they were just
They needed the seat.
They needed the seat.
They needed that seat.
Right. We didn't want 7 board members. We didn't want more than 5.
Yeah.
So if I had 3 seats that
pretty
were in the
standard
hands of the
thing when
wrong
they're
people,
making-
they
yeah.
were going to take those 3 seats and say, no, they're ours now.
Yeah.
You get these other 2. That's it.
Right.
Right.
And that's pretty standard when they're investing money.
So it was Chris Ford and I.
Yeah.
I mean, we're the guys on the board,
Yeah.
right? So, but when they put you in a public situation like that and they start asking you questions like that or challenging you like
Those
that,
are traps, though.
those are the kind of things you're like, okay, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out on my own. You're not here to support me as an employer. You're here to tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
It's like a coach. If you're a kid and you're playing baseball and the coach keeps yelling at you, you're doing that wrong. You're doing that wrong. You know what my response typically to the coach was? Tell her how to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'd say about this scenario about diversity, right? When we were talking about that scenario with having the board members and 70% female, which is, it just, what it triggered for me was a lot of people think that diversity is only about ethnicity.
Yeah.
And that's where, we go wrong, because diversity is so many things. It's not monolithic, and it's about what you've done, who you've been around, your experiences, your gender, all of it is included in diversity.
Yeah.
And we get so locked in on ethnicity that we look at a company like yours that's got 70% women, which is diversity, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
It's diversity.
Yeah.
And we attack that. And so those are traps to me. And that's not my style, right? My style is not to trap anybody. Again, don't retreat, rethink, right? It's just, hey, tell me about the percentages of the 70 who might be brown or black. What's that look like?
Right. Didn't ask me that question.
Are you looking for ways to increase that? And there's just so many different ways to approach it. But that's why I don't label myself as a DEI speaker, because I'm really not. Because again, I talk about leadership. I talk about culture. I talk about helping people become better humans who are responsible for humans.
Right.
That's what we need.
Well, let's talk about the DEI or affirmative action stuff that we saw years ago, but still affects us. The unfortunate statistics are that the dropout rate for black students in college is almost 20% higher than it is for whites. Mm-hmm. It's like 55% versus 35%. Unfortunately, a lot of those blacks, because of their financial situation, took out loans, and now they don't have the degree to help pay back the loan. And we've created this population, and it's a growing and large population of, disaffected minorities who are now saddled with choking debt.
Totally.
And no means of getting it paid.
Totally.
And we got to fix that. But I guess what I wanted to ask you is, how would you fix that?
I wish I was that smart. Here's what I'll tell you.
But I thought you were.
I am. That's the rumor. I got people convinced that
that's what I heard about you.
Absolutely
I don't know.
that smart.
All the other people in the room said that.
I've been privileged to go through the Racial Equity Institute, which talks a lot about the analytics behind education and diversity of education.
Yeah.
What they have come up with, which is important to know as it relates to that, and I'll talk to you about what I'm doing with that personally. What's important to know about that, they analyze diverse students who went out and got executive MBAs and masters. And what they found out, once that translated into corporate, they were making the same amount of money as someone white with an undergraduate. So think about that scenario for a minute. I want to repeat that. Black and brown students who were gaining master degrees and executive MBAs, once they got to corporate, they were earning the same thing as someone white with an undergraduate degree. So think about what that means. You have that demographic that's taking out loans for all of that, and they're saddled with debt, but there's no translation into increased income. So you have all this happening. That's one facet of it. What I can tell you personally is there's a group of us, I went to school in Nebraska, there's a group of us that started a scholarship about 4 years ago. We funded out of pocket. What we found from the president of the school was that black and brown students were dropping out for that reason. Can't afford school anymore. You know what drove them out of school? Car breaks down.
Yeah.
Something happens because the data suggests that not all, but a high percentage of these black and brown students don't have trust funds, don't have college bundles or money that they go to school with. So any little detour financially, they have to decide, am I going to fix that, take care of that, or I'm going to pull out of school? And they pull out of school. So what we did to mitigate that, we became the stopgap for that school, black and brown kids. And so we funded, pulled money together. In 3 years, it got endowed. It's got about 50 grand in it right now. Every year we go back and we award scholarships. And so the school picks out the student that's at risk from dropping out. And that money funds those kids to stay in school. It's a real issue. It's data behind it. You can go to Pew Research, pew.org. You can pull up all this stuff. It's a real issue. And we haven't addressed that issue. We just feel like, when Biden was introducing the bill that would forgive all that, we were like, well, why are these kids getting a break? Well, if you understood the dynamics and the data and the analytics behind it, you would see they're taking out these loans without any kind of help. And you could say, well, how come the parents couldn't work? That's not the reality of it, right?
Sure.
And there's a lot, that's a whole different discussion, but we have to address that. We chose, as 6 black men of color, to address that and to create a scholarship for black students. Now, some of the things I've talked about as I spoke at their endowment dinner a couple years ago, one of the things I told that audience was, I realized that it appears we're being exclusive and not inclusive. Here's what I'll tell you. It wouldn't make sense to award white kids with more money because they have access to more money than black and brown kids. That is a fact. If you look at the debt that's taken out of school, brown and black kids take out the most student loans as a demographic than any other demographic, right? So here's our hope. If we can grow this scholarship, what I want to do with the acknowledgement of our group, we have 6 members. What I want to do is take out the parameters of black and brown and just award need.
Yeah.
But we have to speak to the immediate need, which is this need for brown and black students. So it's I don't know that I have an answer, but I think we have to acknowledge that if that information is accurate, there's no reason why it wouldn't be accurate coming from the Racial Equity Institute, which is a real institute. Yeah. It's like a think tank. That's a real problem, right? We've sold brown and black kids that if you get these high-level education degrees, you're going to make more money. But then the research says you're not. Then you've taken on an unnecessary financial burden that you didn't need to take on.
Didn't, though, some of the effort to make more room for minorities at the higher education level lead to lowering SAT and ACT scores requirements and things like that?
I heard that.
That led to, unfortunately, a large number of the people who drop out cannot academically keep up. And so they keep dropping classes and keep moving away from STEM fields. They move away from science fields because the work is too rigorous. And there's data on this.
Yeah, I have not heard that. I'm not familiar with that data, to be honest.
There's in fact, I think one of them is a Pew Institute research.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I'll have to look that up, But
I'm happy to share that with you.
Please do, because I think that speaks to, that concerns me. The statement alone concerns me because it suggests what I think we're hearing from DC, that if you're focused on diversity, you're forgiving quality experience, and that is not the case, right? That's not the case. And I think that's a perception that's floating around that sort of concerns me, because black and brown kids are as educated based on where they come from, not giving everything.
I get that,
right?
But
and I just,
we push a lot of kids into elite institutions using affirmative action, and those elite institutions were not prepared to provide the remedial work that a lot of these students needed. Now, I can tell you, I mean, that's true of white kids too. It's not because of affirmative action, but because they're just not getting as educated as they should in the high school levels anymore.
Yeah.
And they're showing up with poor math and reading skills in general across the board. And yet we know that also black and brown students suffer from even worse reading and math scores than the white kids do. And so when they show up in these higher education institutions, they are not prepared for the work. There's a huge number of white kids that are not pursuing a degree anymore who are also saddled with debt. In fact, the debt numbers for black and brown kids is like on average like $35,000, and for the white kids it's $25,000 because, like you said earlier, the white kids had access to more resources than the black kids did. But it's not just I ran out of money, I can't continue. I had that experience personally, so I'm painfully aware of it.
Right.
It's also the fact that I cannot keep up. And so they're moving. Initially, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be this or I want to be that. And everybody wants to pursue that. And then they get there and they realize, holy crap, this is requiring math that algebra class, I didn't pay attention. The geometry class, I wasn't paying attention. Oh, I avoided taking that trigonometry class or the calculus class because I knew it would be too hard. And now I get to college and I'm expected to know this stuff in order to become an electrical engineer or a civil engineer or whatever it is. Right. And I don't know that stuff.
I wonder what those numbers are, because even when you're on scholarship and you go to school, you take class and you go, oh my God, I didn't know it was this, and you drop it, right? and so
I've been there.
so I wonder what those numbers are. I also wonder too, and I can't think of the term, but I'll just describe it as this. You know, you have funders of colleges that have kids that go through free and get free access and all that, and then they find out the same thing, which is, oh my God, I have to do all this work and this is not what I signed up for. So you have that, but we talk more about, sometimes we seem to talk more about helping brown and black kids obtain educational opportunities. But then we have these kids that only reason they got to Harvard or any of those Ivy League schools is because their father's a funder, went there, and it gave them immediate access in. So I think we have to talk about the entire pot and not isolate, right? So we got to be careful how we, again, which is a perception, right? We have to think about not isolating the group, but talk about it all. And that's part of the thing that I tried to do as a social activist, is to level that playground. If we're going to talk about affirmative action, allowing kids to get DEI access to certain schools, because that's what the school is requiring, which means to them they're not allowing someone white to come in. But then we allow those kids who had a father that went there that funds the school immediate access. We got to talk about it all. We just can't isolate a group.
No, I agree, and I think that it's a multifaceted problem.
It's complex, super complex.
You know, we're creating a population of young people who are not going to be paying off these loans anytime soon. Yes, I think just this last week, their student loan indebtedness now is affecting their FICO scores. So a lot of the people who are even now adults out in the workforce, their FICO score is going to come down because they haven't been making payments, and they're not going to be able to buy that house or rent that apartment or whatever it is that FICO scores are required for today. And that's
I don't know.
Debilitating.
I know we if I want to talk about this, I don't want us to go down a rabbit hole with that. But I just, for me, my social activist antenna comes up because I think if we know sort of the systems that are involved with minorities obtaining higher education opportunities, why wouldn't we help that? And it's not saying that other people have not worked hard, but if I had the straight line to school and others had to walk uphill, jump in a manhole, and then dodge a car and then get to school, that's not the same path.
Yeah, right.
And why aren't we helping them not do all those things and go straight line? I think that's what the forgiveness to me really is about. It's not about, well, I paid for school. It's not that for me. I paid for some of my school. Right? I got scholarships for the rest, but I paid for some of my school. I'm okay with someone that had a hard route to school and got help. And what I would say, and what I've said to people who have asked me, part of my work, and the reason I think that I'm here with you, is because I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
I think the reason you have access and excess to financial stuff or whatever that might be, or power to people, or access to people and some power in a platform, is to help others who don't. And schooling is one way. And I'll tell you, this scholarship is an amazing thing that we created because, again, it doesn't make sense for me to be a philanthropist. It doesn't, right? Coming from where I come from. And I say that respectfully to what we're doing, but what we've chosen to do is to pull money together to impact something that we found out about. And I think it was a spiritual thing, because I tell you, when we visited that campus, we hadn't been back in 25 years. Our job was to drink beer and talk how great we were in school and just see some of the campus. And then all of a sudden we hear this story, we go back to dinner, and we're like, hey, what if we fix that?
Yeah. Now let's go have another beer and talk
Let's
about
have
it.
another beer and talk about it. And I think if we had more people thinking, how could we impact somebody else that needs our help?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Because everything that you've said makes sense, and what you're doing with the scholarship program is fantastic. But, obviously you said, you can track certain metrics and how they perform and things like that, and you're going to look at need as opposed to
100%.
color, right?
100%.
That's great. That's great. So what I would propose, and I might even help fund this, is a tutoring program for entering freshmen with less than a 20 ACT, because they're going to struggle. They don't have the math or reading skills to get through the 100 level classes. So they're taking Math 001 and English 001, and they're taking remedial classes to get them up to speed so they can move on to classes that they really should be taking.
Yeah.
And that's not confined just to minorities. That's whites as well.
Right.
Like I said earlier, there's plenty of white schools, right, that are white dominated, that are graduating kids with really crappy math and reading scores, and we've got to help fix that. How do we fix it? Tell them not to go to school because you're not prepared for it? Let them take on a bunch of debt and then have them drop out because they can't handle the rigors of the classroom? No.
Yeah.
We have to help them. And if their SAT score is less than, 1,200 or 1,000, and your ACT score is less than a 20, then you can sign up for this program and we will tutor you.
One thing I like the idea that when our scholarship was based on, there were some parameters, right? So we're not involved in the selection process. We don't need to be.
Yeah.
We trust the school because it's a partnership, and you know better than us, because we're all spread out over the country, on what student is in need than we do. And so we trust the school to bring us students for consideration, and we've never said no. And so, and then you have to be a junior, because we don't want you as a freshman to get money and then leave the school and go to another school, right? So that's part of it, right? So you have to be a junior. We want to keep you in. There was some chatter about that they were going to start doing away with ACTs, that wasn't going to be the way in. So I wonder, I've got some people in ACT prep that I know, and I wonder, because at the end of the day, it's not that you're bad, you're just a bad test taker sometimes. Like my daughter did okay in her ACT, but she's not a great test taker, right? But she's teaching right down the road at Harmony Elementary School, Duval Valley, graduate at Pitt State, doing great, living her best life.
Yeah.
And so I just want to be helpful in a way that is purpose-driven, that matters to me.
Yeah.
Right? And education to me is the great equalizer to me. It provides, it's not the only way to have success at all, but the experience of going to college, I think people should have that experience, in my opinion. But is it worth you going into $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 worth of debt to do it just to have the experience? Not necessarily, right? I think you have to be selective about where you, like my daughter was being, out of LA at the East, was being driven towards a school that was $40,000 a year to be a teacher. I go, you're barely going to make $40,000 a year to be a teacher. Why would you do that? So Pitt State was the option for her. Great school, not that expensive, but a great school, right? And so we didn't need to have her coming out of school with almost $200,000 in debt when she was going to be making $40,000 or $50,000 a year.
Yeah,
Didn't make
but
sense.
she was fortunate to have you to guide her. I think, a lot of parents who are not as connected to the real world as you would be, if you can get into, a private school like that and they're willing to take you, by all means, you need to go. It's a privilege and it's an honor and all these wonderful things. You're going to come out with all this opportunity. And while that may be true, and maybe by large measure it is true, I don't know. But, for those kids who do endeavor to do that and then can't handle the rigors of the class or whatever the reasons are, Yeah, walking away without a degree and $80,000 in debt would be a bad day.
Bad decision. And I'll
And
tell you, Don, if I had a chance to do it all over again, because school was never my thing. I certainly like the social aspect of school.
of course.
That's my thing, right? I like being social. But football was the entry point. No one was guiding me because no one went to college in my immediate family. And so being a first generation college student, you're just an opportunity to continue to play and have some fun. And it was really about play and have fun. It had nothing to do about academia. You learn academia once you're here because in order to keep that scholarship, you got to have a certain GPA. And, my first semester there, I had a 1.3 and they're like, hey, we're going to need you to step that up a little bit. So, I ended up, finishing strong, I think close to a 3.0 when I graduated, which is great for me, but people are getting 4.6, it's just insane right now. So, but the point was people could have guided me to military or skilled trade, and they should have, because I wasn't college material because I didn't like school.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, in my focus wasn't, oh my God, I've got to get this degree in this area because I want to do that. I was never that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm more like a pinball, right? Pinballs just bounce around. So I bounced around, found my stretch, found my skill set, found my craft. And I got really good at my craft. And what I found was people saw value in the craft. And that's what has led me through this journey, for the last, several years, longer than that. And I've just embraced that. And so, whenever there's a pivot or something like that, what I've talked to people about, you have to ask yourself, is it happening to you or is it happening for you? And more times than not, it's happening for you. In the same way I guide my daughter the same way in taking on opportunities to teach young people, second graders, right? Blue Valley's not friendly to teachers. Her first year wasn't friendly. She was coming home every day in tears, right? And so you have to guide through, you have to be there to listen and ask, how do I help? And I have to teach her how to have agency for herself, and that you don't have to put up with that because you can go anywhere and teach, right? And then she gets in her grooves, and the second, third year is a lot better, right? So I'm listening, I'm learning, I'm always learning, always in growth mode, right? And all of this stuff that I'm talking about, the scholarships, the race, all that stuff is a part of the package. And being comfortable in that skin so that when you walk in rooms, you sort of own the room, right?
Yeah, you're typically I would say, well, you're really unique. I have met and have friends.
I am not unique.
Of color who are very much like you, comfortable in their own skin, confident, capable, wonderful to be around, funny, enjoy a good time,
all
love
the
to
things.
smile. No, really. You see a lot of serious people, they don't smile very much. And I don't know if it's just, they're sad or whatever.
Right.
But all of my friends, and I tend to keep only those people around me that reflect the kind of attitude I want to be around.
That's right.
Because it either, enhances my day or, I learn
if they
something
drain
from
you,
them.
why do you want to be around?
Right. It's there are people like that. And I've learned as I've gotten older to find ways to, marginalize those folks. But I enjoy and have always enjoyed talking with you about these things because your perspective is different than mine. We never argue about it, but, I learn so much from you.
Well, ditto.
That is truly, it's really a great experience. So, Andre, I can't thank you enough for being here today. And if there's anything else we need to talk about, we got plenty of time. But
no, it's I'm always humbled by the invitation, right? And I respect you, and I'm proud of what you've done. And I think people, if you and I get together for coffee or lunch sometimes, and I think there are people who go, why are they together? Like, how did those two guys?
So
get
you
together?
think those things? I don't even think about that.
Here's
I
why,
don't even
here's
think
why
about
I think
that.
it, because we are from so many different. There's so many differences in how we grew up and all.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
And that's not a knock, by the way. That's a compliment, because I appreciate the trust that you have in me, right? And what you said it's flattering to me. And what I try to say to people is, whenever you're meeting with people, it's never one-sided in terms of what you get back, right? These are shared values, right? I get as much from you probably as you get from me, maybe more, right? Just listening to you and learning from you. And I also listen for your experiences, right? I'm listening to what you said about the women that were 70%. All those things. And I think that, again, is part of the issue when we start to assume that somebody is one way. We're not really listening to anything. And so I appreciate the fact that you invited me, and I love the conversation. I hope it's what you wanted.
What I wanted was exactly what I think
Good.
I've gotten. Your authentic self,
Yeah.
talking about topics that are dear to you
Yeah.
with your perspective. I tried to come in with,
Yeah.
an open mind about everything. I know you, so I kind of knew what you were going to say about some of the things.
Yeah.
But even where I challenged you, you were gracious enough to explain things to me that, I can't always appreciate.
Yeah.
Think I do, right? This is, again, the implicit bias. I think I get it. And I've, spent probably more time than most people like me trying to understand and asking the questions and being open to thoughts that are different than mine. Sometimes it's hard.
It is hard.
It's hard. But I think that I have a tiny little bit of empathy in the sense that I'd go into a room when I was 10 years old and I wouldn't see anybody look like me either.
Mm.
I was called out as soon as people realized I was the only Asian, and I was I was the chink and the Chinaman and the all that stuff, and none of that felt good. I tell the story. My kids don't like when they hear this. That there'd be a kid. There was a kid who actually knocked on my door, and I answered the door. He goes, "Get out here! I want to kick your ass." And it's like, why? Because you're a chink, and I'm like, God. So I can empathize a little bit with what that feels like. On the other hand, I can't.
Yeah.
Obviously relate to the breadth and depth of what you in your culture have gone through. So it's always interesting to me because I didn't finish college either. I sit in rooms with really important people.
Yes, you do.
Somebody asked me the other day, is Bill Gates really like this? I said, yeah, I've met him a couple of times. He's just exactly like that. In fact, you want to pull his glasses off his face and clean them for him because he can't even figure that out. I seriously, the first time I met him, I was like, "Can I clean those glasses
dirty, man.
for
Let's
you?
clean these
How
up."
do you even see what you're looking at?
Why do you wear them? You can't see.
But we had to open our booth early at a big convention where we were showing off our stuff because Bill comes through early because he's a celebrity, right? So he came and he's spent time with us in our booth at this big computer show used to called Comdex, and so I've been in rooms with those kinds of people, and I wasn't intimidated by them.
No.
I was only myself ever, and I like to think that no matter where I am in any organization, I treat from top to bottom everybody equally the same, and that if I were to err on anything, I would err on being more generous than not.
Always.
It's like the other day I figured out I'm trying to be good to servers and waitresses because my mom was a waitress for years, and I just have this thing about restaurants need good servers.
They do.
Servers need to get paid. If we give them some abatement on their tips, great. Whether or not we do, that's okay.
Yeah.
But I've just decided that what, I'm just going to give everybody $20. I don't care what the bill is. I mean, the small ones, right?
Right.
Anything under $100, you're going to get 20 from me. I don't care what it is. I got an $8 bill. Okay, so you get $28.
Right.
Just because I want to make sure those people understand that the smaller the check, the more I value the service.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What you're speaking on is, to me, being seen, right? I mean, I remember it wasn't with you, it was with somebody else, but I was at Pilgrim's, and sometimes I'll buy the whole line coffee, whatever they're doing, right? And this lady, she was a white lady, probably in her 60s. She goes, "Why are you doing that?" And I go, "Because I'm just decided I was going to buy coffee." And she goes, "But no one's ever done that for me." And I go, "Well, that's a shame. And I'm glad I could do that for you." Sometimes here's what I feel. If you think you ought to do something like that, something got sent your way to do that thing. So do that thing, right? And that's how I respond to that. But the thing about opening the door, I don't know what kind of hate exists in people that's what comes out of their mouth. We don't care in our family. We really don't care about color. We acknowledge your color.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier.
Yeah.
We don't care.
But
Right?
we
We love everyone. Our requirement are you a good human being?
Yeah.
I don't care if you, to your point, purple. If you're purple, we have the Captain Kirk philosophy.
There you go, man.
If you're purple or green, you are welcome in our house. So we just don't care, and it's just beautiful, right? And so again, my network's very diverse. But I'll tell you this, and I know we can end for this. Years ago, Well, two things, right? I know we have time, but two things. So Pat McCown is a guy that I've admired for a number of reasons, right? Started McCown Gordon, met him many years ago.
Yeah.
And I saw him recently when I was having lunch with somebody else. He's like, yeah, we got to catch up. So we caught up. And I was talking to him, and I said, you've always been so humble. Where'd that come from you? Right? This speaks to the curiosity about people. I think where you and I connected was I was curious about you and your journey and your pathway. I knew about Chicago, knew about public school, all that stuff, right? So I'm curious about people, and it matters. So I'm talking to Pat about the same. I said, Pat, I'm a first-generation college student, and mother raised three on her own. He said, I'm a first-generation college student. He said, my wife put me through engineering school. I go, no shit. And it gave me a different perspective because I think the perspective, Pat is McCown Gordon.
Yeah.
And I think most people think he just woke up and was McCown Gordon. Well, they don't understand the pathway to that.
Yeah.
And so I just have appreciation for being able, I spend time with some really good people, present company excluded. And so I'm flattered that I get a chance to do that. The other thing I'll tell you, and I think what I've said to people, anyone that has impacted your life, you ought to tell them why they're vertical.
Yeah.
And so I happened to be, this is years ago at the Costco in Linwood, and I'm pumping gas. It's funny to me because what she did was kind of funny to me. White lady. And I just kept looking at her, Don, because I thought I knew her. And she started to grip up on her purse. and I go, is your name Miss Pickle? She goes, André Davis, my fourth grade teacher.
Really?
And when we moved from the inner city of Kansas City, coming from New York to Grandview, which was a suburb, I was the only little black kid in her class.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I want to thank you. And she says, for what? I was the only black kid in your class, but you never made me feel that way.
Yeah.
She said, André, I always knew you'd be a good kid. What are you doing now? And I told her, I'm not surprised at all. And it was just this experience. I haven't seen her since, but it was just what a weird scenario for me to recognize her face.
Yeah.
And then she ended up being, because we moved there when I was going into fourth grade, ended up being my fourth grade teacher. Now a bunch of us are mentoring Grandview. We're working with Superintendent Rodriguez over there for some initiatives. It's a lot of fun. So anyway, this has been fun for me. Thank you.
Can I tell you one quick story?
You can.
Just like the story you
just stay
told.
long. I got time.
So my oldest daughter, she's dark complected like me, dark hair that I used to have, don't have it anymore. So this was, I think, a time when we had our lake house, and so we spent a lot of time at the lake. We didn't have a lot of money, so we thought the lake would make more sense than taking big trips and that kind of thing. We would build more memories and have a place to go.
It'd be a second home for you.
Yeah. And so we spent the summer there, and so my oldest daughter, like me, tans like crazy, right? So she got pretty dark. And so she's starting middle school, I think, so 6th grade, right? Something like that, or 6th or 7th. And they go to her first day of class, and her well-meaning teacher starts introducing herself to the class. So happy to be here. I'm glad to look around this room and see, all the kids that are going to be here this year. And I'm also really proud that we have one African-American child in our class. And everybody's looking at each other like,
what?
Because,
she said that? Wow.
Yeah. And Samantha Peterson. And my daughter was like,
what did she say?
What? She didn't.
I'm not African American.
She came home and told mom. and I thought,
that's unbelievable.
Somebody pull this poor teacher aside.
Well, yeah, what a rude awakening she's going to have when she finds you don't have any black kids in your class at all.
You don't even know what one looks like.
That's a great story.
Yeah, I just, based on your school story, it brought that
to me speaks to what I talked about earlier, is that ignorance or malice, right?
Yeah.
And that's just an honest, funny story. Why not would you be perceived that way? And I think we just have to have a little fun with.
Yeah.
A bunch of us get together. We still watch Blazing Saddles. Now, you can call me right, wrong, or indifferent. That's an amazing damn movie.
Well, that's like walking up to a heavy-set woman and going, so how far along are you?
100%. You can't do that. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that.
Don't do that.
But I think, people don't know that movie. Couldn't make that movie today, for sure.
No.
But Mel Brooks made that movie, if you can believe it or not, because race relations in the 70s were so bad. So he wanted to make fun of everyone.
He made fun of everything.
And he did. And people don't know there are only 3 writers on that movie.
Oh, yeah.
Gene Wilder, Mel, and Richard Pryor.
Really, Pryor?
So when you start looking at that movie, knowing Richard Pryor had his hand on it, it's a
Now
little
you know
different.
why.
It's a different view, but it's a funny movie. We watch it. My kids
hilarious.
don't get it, but
Yeah.
I love those kind of stories, right? Because it's just like I remember when the whole African American thing was being thrown around, and people
Yeah.
were asking me like, I say I'm black, and if you want to call me African American, that's okay. That's my ancestry for
Yeah.
sure. I'm good with either, right? I'm
Yeah.
not rigid about any of it, right? And
Yeah.
I think we just have to be okay and accepting to people the way we want them to be accepting to us.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
I call myself beige.
Yeah, I'm
not
more
black.
caramel.
I'm
I
not
like
brown.
caramel as well.
Caramel's good. Caramel's good.
Truffle might be one thing.
Yeah, taupe.
Yeah,
I'm taupe.
I'm a little bit of that too. So whatever you want to call me, I'm good.
Andre,
So,
thank you
hey,
so
thank
much
you.
for doing this. This was
So much
great.
fun.
Had a blast.
Same. Thank you.